Good evening, peoples. I'm Pastor Leia, and this is my friend Ginger Snap, who is also my co-host, who got very excited when she saw that I was attaching the microphone to the computer, as she does, because that means lap time. Anyway, welcome back to our living room for our series on the apostles. We've been going through them alphabetically. There are 5 different lists of the names of the apostles in the 4 Gospels and then also in the book of Acts. They don't all necessarily line up. So today we have Matthew, who is named in 4 of the lists, but is not named in the Gospel of John, which is interesting. But he is named in the apostle lists in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Acts. So the name Matthew means gift of God. It's from a Hebrew name, I think Matityahu, into a Greek Mattathias, which then is shortened to Matthias, like as a nickname. Anyway, so it's the Greek version of a Hebrew name that means gift of God. And so I thought we would start off by reading his call story in Matthew chapter 9. If you could please not headbutt the Bible, I would appreciate that. Cats. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and Jesus said to him, "Follow me." And the man got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when Jesus heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." This is the word of the Lord. Oh, I forgot to look up exactly what verse the mercy versus sacrifice is, but it's one of the traditional readings for Ash Wednesday. God has this whole thing about, like, maybe if you could be nice to each other, I would appreciate that more than any burnt offerings you could offer. You know, maybe be nice to each other, because I would rather have that. Anyway, so tax collector, or in older translations especially, it's often publican. So anyway, that is a Roman public servant whose duties did include the collection of taxes, but also involved overseeing public building projects, collecting port duties, and supplying Roman legions or military. So they were members of a pretty high-ranking social class, like just below the senatorial patrician class. Which is kind of comparable to what we would think of as knights, except that, like, knights are cool, they have swords, and nobody likes tax collectors. Even though the Beatles did write we don't bite jewelry, even though the Beatles wrote a whole song about them. So men of this class were allowed to wear a tunic with a narrow stripe as opposed to a wide stripe, which is what a senator would be wearing. And they got good seats at sports events and, like, public functions, and they were entitled to wear a gold ring on their left hands. So all of this is to say that Roman society was, like, super structured. And so if Matthew was a tax collector and he left all of that behind, he didn't just leave a well-paying job, which he did, but he also left an elite social status. Like, even though, again, nobody likes tax collectors. And so by voluntarily leaving that, then, you don't get the striped tunic and the gold ring and the good seats at sports stuff. So I also wanted to read a passage from the book of Mark. Again, if you could refrain from headbutting or pawing at the Bible, I would appreciate that. So from Mark 2, what did I literally just say? Cats don't listen. Jesus went out again beside the sea. The whole crowd gathered around him, and he taught them. As he was walking along, he saw Levi, son of Alpheus, sitting at the tax booth, and Jesus said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were also sitting with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. When the scribes and Pharisees saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, they said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" When Jesus heard this, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners. So this is a very similar story, except that it's about a guy called Levi, the son of Alpheus. So Levi is very definitely a Hebrew name. It hasn't been Greekified or whatever. It means joined or united. So Levi, son of Alpheus, would presumably be the brother of James, son of Alpheus, who is named as a disciple. Levi isn't. So in all 4 apostle lists that include Matthew, James, son of Alpheus, is also named. But in all 4 of those lists, Matthew is just Matthew. So are Matthew and Levi the same person? Could Jesus have inspired multiple tax collectors to leave everything behind and follow him? I would say yes to that rhetorical question. So Levi is mentioned once in Mark, in the story we just read, and once in Luke, which is a basically identical story, but Levi is never mentioned anywhere else in the New Testament. But Levi and Matthew seem to be pretty consistently assumed to be the same person. Unlike every Bible website, saint website, encyclopedia, whatever I was looking at today, which they just kind of all take it as a given that Matthew and Levi are the same person. I guess I'd never really thought about it before today. I probably would have read them as different people with similar call stories, because, Jesus kind of had an effect on a lot of people of they meet him and then they drop everything and follow him. This happens with fishermen and all sorts of other random people throughout the Gospels. They're different and unique stories, but there's no reason why Jesus couldn't have had multiple followers who were tax collectors who, left everything behind to follow him, because you can't really consistently collect taxes if you're also following an itinerant preacher around. Those wouldn't really work together. But in both Mark and Luke, that story of Levi, the tax collector, leaving everything behind to follow Jesus is literally 1 chapter before the respective authors name out the 12 disciples, which feature Matthew. So it's not they're far apart in the book, and maybe by the time you get to chapter 18, you've forgotten the name of a guy in chapter 2, and so you've accidentally given him a different name. Nothing like that. It was the next chapter. There's Levi, and then on the next page, here's the list of 12 people. Levi is not one of them, but Matthew is. And it's never Matthew, son of Alpheus, either. It's just Matthew. Anyway, so I feel like somebody would have mentioned it if, Levi changed his name to Matthew. Am I missing something? I feel like I have to be missing something. Surely I'm missing something. Because everyone else seems to have come to the conclusion they're this. Anyway, it makes more sense to me for a publican or tax collector to have a Greek name, because Jews couldn't be Roman citizens except under super specific kind of unusual circumstances, if they converted after they were being born Roman. Anyway, so maybe Matthew or Levi worked for a tax collector might make more sense, because they're kind of Hebrew names, maybe not necessarily Matthew as much. So one could also ask, why is this prompting a borderline existential crisis in me today? I couldn't answer that one, but I guess then again, does it really matter? Because probably the main point to take away is that Jesus had a really profound effect on people of all kinds. That's probably more important than were Matthew and Levi the same person. Anyway, if I am more than usually tired tomorrow, you can know that now it is because I stayed up late wondering whether Matthew and Levi were the same person. Anyway. So the Gospel of Matthew is attributed to Matthew the disciple, but the book itself never gives an author, and it also never claims an eyewitness perspective. So the Gospel of Matthew was probably first written 80 to 90 AD, probably in Greek, and then couple generations later, a Greek bishop decided in the year 125 that the book had been written by Matthew, and I guess we all just decided to roll with that. Like, it's pretty, agreed by scholars today that Matthew probably didn't write Matthew, but it still says Matthew in the book, so it's the name that we've given it. So, I guess I hadn't really thought about, I have read about, why John is considered to be the beloved disciple and therefore the author of John. Hadn't really thought about, what it is that makes Matthew the author attributed of Matthew, but because some dude in Greece said so in 125, which, I guess the book needs a name, so sure. Anyway, so as one of the evangelists, Matthew is depicted either as or with either an angel or a man. The other evangelist, John, is an eagle, Mark is a lion, and Luke is an ox. So those are some symbols that go along with some symbols in Ezekiel and Revelation. So according to tradition, Matthew preached to the Jews for 15 years, and then he traveled to Ethiopia and or Persia or Macedonia or Syria. There are some different stories about where Matthew ended up. Much more variation than with some of the other disciples that we've talked about. So some sources let him die a non-martyr death, which is pretty unusual. I had actually never come across that today, that any sources said that he died a non-martyr death, because I had always been under the impression that, according to legend, all of them died painful, unfortunate deaths, except for John, who got to die of old age. Anyway, but in the Golden Legend, which was a pretty well-known medieval collection of hagiographies, which are the biographies of saints, from Greek hagios, which is holy. So it's like holy biography. So anyway, so in the story in the Golden Legend, a king hires a mercenary who stabs Matthew in the back with a sword while he is standing at the altar praying. And then Caravaggio did a super melodramatic painting of a scene like that. It's a great dramatic scene. There's a few other historical figures who are, according to legend, recorded to have been killed while they were praying, which is a very dramatic scene. It seems, very specific. You could stab someone in the back with a sword while they're praying at an altar, or in the Caravaggio painting, I think, don't bite, rude. Or in the Caravaggio painting, I think he's blessing communion. Anyway, if you're gonna do a big melodramatic painting, go all in, Anyway, so according to other sources, Matthew was burned or stoned or beheaded. So those are some pretty varying causes of death, whether he was stabbed through by a sword or burned or stoned or beheaded or just died of old age. Those are very different stories. Anyway, his feast day is September 21st in the Western Church, but in the Eastern Church, it's November 16th. Because we have different days for things, including Easter, just to, make it all complicated. So he is the patron saint of, don't bite. I shouldn't be feeling your teeth, you jerk. He's the patron saint of accountants and bankers, and bookkeepers and currency exchangers and customs officers and stockbrokers and tax collectors and money managers, which all of those definitely make sense since, tax collector. So sure, all of those mathy number money things. He's also the patron saint of security guards, and I was trying to figure out why I don't follow that one. A lot of saints have some kind of random patronages that don't seem at first glance to have much to do with their story, but I'm sure that I'm missing out on another legend about him from somewhere in which somebody gets protected from, I don't know. Anyway, he's the patron saint of security guards, is my point here. So in art, he might be shown with a bag of coins, because money changer, tax collector. He might also be shown with a spear or lance or sword, because to tell them apart, because it's not like we know, what they looked like. It's not like the gospel says, oh, and Saint, or the apostle so-and-so had a vertical scar under his left eye, and brown hair, and liked to wear the color green. I don't know. So we don't know what they look like, so we show them with something representing how they died, because that tells them apart in the stories that we have about them. So anyway, sword, because that's how you want to be remembered, with the tool of your execution or murder or whatever. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna go off and continue my little existential crisis over whether Matthew and Levi are the same person. I guess I can just have to content myself with, there's so much that we don't know about these people, and I guess maybe that helps us to see ourselves in their shoes, maybe ask like what we would have done in their position. I don't know, like why Matthew, Levi, same? So this is like really gonna bug me now. So yeah. Anyway, I hope to see some of you on Thursday for our. Now you're biting my hair, you weirdo! Oh my gosh, you're being very bitey today. See some of you on Thursday for our fellowship Zoom at 5. We are still worshiping at 10 a.m. in person. We started a live stream at about 10:15. This past Sunday, we did not live stream our service because we were worshiping in Fellowship Hall with a fun, special, interactive service. If you weren't there, you missed out. But we did start a community group art project thing that you'll be hearing more about and will continue to be worked on. This particular Sunday, June 12th, we're also having our graduation breakfast at 8:30, honoring our 2 high school graduates of the year. And so it will be graduation Sunday, and they'll both be speaking to us. We have a special speaker for breakfast. Anyway, so you should come and join us for that. So until then, I am going to have an existential crisis about Matthew and Levi. Ginger Snap is going to bite my thumb. Until next time.